Yeah.
Are people watching?
Hey,
How are you?
I'm getting you.
I'm good, thank you.
That's
Um,
good. Where's Fruity?
I actually gave her a salad now, so she's keeping herself entertained for a little bit, and then she'll probably come and join.
Oh, Shane.
Yeah.
Ajax, let me show you. He's
I
sulking.
mean, he came back.
He came back. He's sulking. I don't know why. I don't know if he's cold, but like he got a jersey today. So
Oh,
he's giving me
so
like the side eye. I don't know
yeah.
why.
He looked so cute. I saw was it a polo neck?
Yeah, Shane, my friend knitted like a turtleneck for him.
Yeah.
And because he's been like so cold and everything, and she didn't want to finish it because she didn't know if it was too big or not. So it's kind
Okay.
of like half finished. So it kind of
Oh,
just like fits here.
like a
So
crop
yeah, he likes it. I don't know why he doesn't have it on. He's being a brat.
No, that's awesome. Yes, I've actually seen some people like put clothes on for bunnies and stuff like that. But it's so Groot is a lioness bunny, and obviously she has a
Yeah,
lot of fur. And now with it being summer, like she gets so hot, she actually like radiates heat. So maybe it's something
yeah.
you have to try when it's winter with her.
That'll be so
But her fur is like a jersey itself. So
cute. I've never seen that jerseys on a bunny. That's that's yeah, that's interesting. That'll be really cute though.
yeah. If you
Especially if they
join
got
lots
like
of
little
bunny groups, yeah, if you join
fat.
lots of bunny groups like I have since I got Groupie, you will
Yeah.
see everything.
That's
Yeah, so how's your week
awesome.
been?
Sorry?
How has your week been with training
Oh,
and
it's been
everything?
great. Yeah. A lot of progress, which has been nice. Like I've been healing up really well, and I've noticed a lot of strength from all the rehab training that I've been doing.
Oh, that's
Has really been like, transferring into my lifts and stuff. So I've been getting PBs and everything, which is so nice because you're like, it's happy, like it's so good to see that everything you've been doing is paying off. So I
exactly.
can't
Oh,
complain
that's
about it.
awesome. Yes,
And
well, that's great news.
yeah. How's it been for you?
So I am actually now on week 2 of starting weightlifting. It's definitely been a massive like not a change, but like my body has definitely felt it not training for 3 months. So basically, have to get back into the swing of things. I've never in my whole 20 years of weightlifting taken off more than like not even a week. And even if I took off a
Mm.
week from weightlifting, it would be me doing CrossFit movements or going into boxing or whatever, and still doing some sort of a weight training with a dumbbell or something. So I've never in my life experienced this, but after 3 months, I remember I sent you a message saying that my thumbs were actually swollen from training.
Yeah,
I've had to
yeah.
put like Voltaren creams on my thumb and
Oh no.
put them into ice buckets and stuff. So it's been a painful comeback in the last week. And I've definitely felt stiff in places I haven't felt in years. Um,
Yeah.
Almost that feeling of a beginner, but now that I've finished week 2 of training, I'm starting to like get back into the swing of things. My body's starting to feel good again. Like you almost want to push more, but then you have to like remind yourself that you haven't trained for 3 months with
Yeah.
weight, and there's no point in pushing yourself to the limit. Like I actually had like quite a few questions from athletes and stuff that has been in quarantine or isolation over some time, like how long will it take them to get back to their full swing of things?
Mm.
And I actually said, it's so easy for an athlete, muscle memory kicks in, and like after a few weeks, like you want to bounce back to like everything so quickly, but
Mm-hmm.
it's such a huge like injury risk, and I think people don't realize like what an effect such a long rest actually has on a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think like that's where like I would say the maturity in the sport comes into play, and obviously like having people around me that like remind me, like listen, take things slow. Your next Olympic qualifier is only like next year, March. So,
Yeah,
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 I have
lots of time.
yeah, I have lots of time.
Yeah. No, but
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see how athletes get back into training after the lockdown. And you're so right, like with the muscle memory. I mean, for me personally, I haven't cleaned from the ground in 3 months. Like I've only been working hang cleans, and then the first time I did it this week, I think it was on Thursday, that's when I hit my PB. And it's crazy how your brain and your muscles remember how to do things. So you have to kind of like, okay, I say hold myself back, but obviously I didn't in that case, but it's fine. But yeah,
Yes.
it's so important to hold yourself back and, like trust yourself and trust your body. It's
Exactly.
amazing what the body
Yeah.
can do.
It is. And I think, obviously, like you've at least had some weights and stuff to train with. So you weren't being like silly about it, like you weren't
Yeah,
like not training for a long time and then pushing yourself. So, now you can only build from that personal best, which is,
exactly.
exactly what you want as an athlete. I mean, there's no better feeling than hitting a new personal best. I mean, I envy you for that feeling because I cannot wait to feel that.
Yeah. Oh, you'll get it. You'll
Yeah.
probably see it'll be so interesting. Your body's probably recovered so well during this lockdown, and it's just gonna
Yeah.
be ready to attack it now.
Yeah, yes, I can't wait. Anyways,
That's awesome.
so for all the people that's joined us, this is obviously now part 2 of our sports psychology talk and about mental skills. And our previous talk went so well. I mean, we ran out of time, and like there was still so many questions that we had, and we still had more questions that we didn't even put on the list to cover. So that's kind of what we're doing now with part 2. And obviously, Giselle, with your background in sports psychology, CrossFit, hockey, netball, my background with weightlifting, CrossFit, and karate. I think we make quite a cool team, and sharing from like both perspectives. Yeah, I think it's awesome for people to join in, and like we've talked how we want to actually grow the awareness of sports psychology. So hopefully with all of these questions and stuff, we can like let people know how important it is to like be mentally strong and be able to like train your mental skills as much as you train your physical skills. So yeah.
100%. I just want to add something there, Mona. If anyone wants to ask any questions, you're more than welcome to ask in the comment section, and then we'll jot it down for our next chat. So we won't be able to answer them now, but if you do have questions, put them down, and we'll gladly speak about them in the next chat.
Yeah, and I'm excited to do many more. Also.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so one of the questions I got, Giselle, so I'll start with the questions today, is regarding youth players. How can they overcome anxiety and sleeping problems before an important game or a tournament?
So I think what's so important to remember is, again, that whole conserving of energy, right? There's no point in sitting down and stressing the night before about how your performance is going to go the next day, because at that moment you actually can't do anything more. Your training has been locked in, all your mental work, everything is done. So it is really important to switch off as athletes, and it's difficult, and I think it does take a lot of practice, but I think, yeah, it's very important to do that. And some of the things that I think could help relieve anxiety and help sleep is to do something that you enjoy, right? So something that relaxes you. So take a bath, meditate, play Xbox or PlayStation, read, whatever. Something to get your mind off of the competition the next day. And something else that works is, if you really are struggling with overthinking it and everything, write your concerns or your thoughts down on a piece of paper, all of it down on a piece of paper. It's out of your head. Then again, move on, play games, meditate, relax, or whatever. And I think in terms of sleep, the biggest piece of advice I can give is don't go to bed too early, because often what happens if you go to bed And I'm not saying too early now is like 8 o'clock, or something. Like, you should make sure that you get the sufficient amount of rest. But, sometimes athletes are like, okay, I need to get to bed now, like, proper routine, rigid. And then you end up in bed at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and you are tossing and turning. And again, everything around you is quiet, so your thoughts are racing, everything. So I think do something that will help you naturally fall asleep, like read or meditate, or, something, again, that can take your mind off of it, but also help your body relax. So that's the advice I would give. I don't know, Mona, if you have any. I mean, it's an important question.
Yeah, definitely. Giselle, like this is something that I have, you can almost say like I've experimented over my years with doing this as well, with competing from such a young age. And I didn't always have someone with the expertise to tell me when I was 10 years old, what exactly to do. I did, however, have like really strict parents when it came to keeping a routine, not changing things before my competition. And I think, especially when it comes to youth athletes and stuff, they're not really, they're not fully trained, so they need someone to be able to like instruct them. So I think as you get older, then obviously like you can start to play with things, etc. Like what works for you, what doesn't. But definitely a main thing that I live by as a coach, as an athlete, is the athlete should not change their routines the week before the competition. And especially the most important thing is the night before. So like you said, now you don't want to say to yourself, oh, I'm competing tomorrow, so I've basically sleep every single night at 10 o'clock and come the night before the competition and I want to go and sleep at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I mean, you're just making yourself a lot more anxious. You're putting that extra pressure on yourself. Like one thing I also like doing with the fact, when it comes to routine, is also making sure like my competition stuff is packed the night before. Yeah. And I think especially with like young athletes and stuff, they can be sometimes all over the show. You don't want them to stress about anything. So I always tell the parents of my youth athletes, just make sure that their stuff is packed. If they have things like their Gatorade or Energize that they drink during their competition, make a small list so that you can check in the morning if there's anything from the fridge that must go like into the cooler bag for your competition. So I would say definitely like keeping a routine beforehand is so important. And like you said, also, keeping yourself busy with like things that you enjoy and not sitting the night before and just like thinking of your competition, visualizing about it. Because I mean, I've also done this myself, and like you tend to overthink things so much that come competition day, which is the next day, you actually feel exhausted just by literally thinking of things over and over. And I mean, like you'll know with visualization, like when you use all your senses, like you literally sometimes felt like you've trained, like you even feel the exact emotion. And with competition, what comes with that is, it's adrenaline. So when you do visualization, without you even knowing, your adrenaline starts to pump and you start to get excited. And after like a big competition, and I don't know if you experience this as well, I tend to dump after a competition. I feel really tired for a while. I feel mentally fatigued, physically fatigued for at least a week after my competition. So, when you overthink things and you think, okay, the night before the competition, I'm just going to think of my competition, come competition day, and you're just like super tired. And you're like, if you can't sleep, to like do things that relax you, like breathing exercises, and like you mentioned, like your meditations and stuff. And I think if you can teach youth athletes that from like a young age, it will be so natural to them when they become older athletes and when they become more experienced athletes that, they don't have to sit and actually think to themselves, okay, I'm going to do meditation now. It will become like a natural thing. So
like part of their routine.
Exactly, yeah. And that's what you want to instill with athletes. I mean, once they can set a routine, they go into competition so much more confident. And that counts probably for us as well, like when we have done everything we've done, the training, we super relaxed, come game day, we get there like nice and early, we are ready for our competition. There's nothing more that you can do the day before except rest. recover, and then give your best on game day.
Yeah, I love that, and I love what you said about the whole routine thing, because I think if you can instill that when they're younger, it becomes a habit. And like you said, then they don't actually have to give energy to thinking about what they need to do. So I think that that's definitely a good point. Another question we got, Mona, do you use any online tools or apps to track your progress? I'm assuming this is for training and maybe nutrition. I'm not too sure.
Well, I think it could definitely be, because this comes from the Science of Sport group. So, they are all like to do with sports science and coaching, and some of them are athletes as well. And I would definitely, when it comes to using apps, now I know there's a lot of great apps out there. I know that, there's apps that can track your training. People do like things like their heart rate, their nutrition, and there's so many amazing apps out there. What I've actually always done as a coach when it comes to mental coaching and when it comes to the physical side of coaching is, and even nutrition, I make Google spreadsheets. So I guess I'm a little bit old school with stuff as well.
I do the same.
Yeah. And it's like, it works like a bomb. I mean, like I've got a nice thing going. I've got an awesome template that I've like done over the years, and yeah, it works for my athletes. I type in their trainings, I type in, the percentages they need to do, then the weights obviously will just pop up and change and stuff like that. I've had a lot of help from James, because he's the computer guru behind stuff like that. I think my thing would have been a lot more old school if he didn't help me with just setting up an actual spreadsheet. Yeah, he's kind of the brains behind it. But when it came to like the mental skills side of things, I actually also use Google spreadsheets for that. And, it's not a thing that you would go and say, okay, you're training X, Y, Z, we're training goal setting, or we're training self-talk, or whatever. So I would do this with my athletes, especially when they combine this with their training. I would have a section where we will talk about their goals, and I'll often fill their goals in for them, or I'll give them the option on the spreadsheet to fill it in, and I can look at it later. Or if there's certain things that, I want them to practice, like yoga or meditation, or if they've had a lot of stress, that kind of stuff, I would tell them, or add it to their program, and, I'd see them tick it afterwards and give their feedback. And the same thing with if we had to do things with like self-talk, I would give them options, where they can write down positive affirmations that they used. And then obviously when the training gets really tough, they can go back to them and actually like see, what they've used and actually how to motivate themselves. I'm not sure if there is any sport psychology apps out there. But like I said, I kind of personalized my own, and it works for me and it works for my athletes. And, I think that's the most important thing. I mean, you don't always have to go super fancy. Because a lot of the times, like if I'm a coach and I go super fancy with apps and I don't even understand it myself, I obviously don't get the best out of the apps and don't get the best out of, what I'm trying to do for my athletes. So I do put a bit more work, I guess, on the backside of things by, developing like the sheets for them and making it personalized to them. And, this is just obviously something that I have felt worked over the years. I don't know, do you have any like apps that you use, or any apps that you've used with clients and stuff like that?
So basically the same thing. I use the Google Excel on my phone. So luckily I have it on my phone all the time. And there basically I just track all my benchmarks, all my weights that I have now, the weights that I want to have by the middle of the year, end of the year. And so that's what I use to track my training. In terms of, mental things, I don't really have anything to track that. I'm more so, like you said, have templates. So I have a PowerPoint that I've created on visualization, my goals, everything, that I try and go through about 5 times a week. And again, that's on my laptop and on my phone, and that's got everything I want to achieve, everything I have achieved. So it's almost just a PowerPoint of a visualization thing. So that keeps me on track with my goals. And if one of my goals changes, then I can change it on that. And so that incorporates really well into like my meditation and everything. Other than those two things, the only other app I use to track anything is my nutrition app, Fat Secrets. It's actually a terrible name for like, tracking nutrition, like Fat Secret. It's horrible. But anyways,
That person really wanted to make a different kind of app. Style and stuff like that.
Yes.
And
Exactly. But basically, I just use that because obviously my coach has given me a certain amount of calories that I need to eat a day and my macros, and I use that to just track that and make sure that I'm honestly just eating enough and eating the right stuff. So those are the only apps that I use to track anything. So it's more so just tracking my nutrition as opposed to really tracking my day-to-day training. Nutrition, mindset, and then, my goals, what I've achieved, what I want to achieve. I've like you said, I really like what you said. Keep it simple. Sometimes when things get complicated, it's unnecessarily complicated. Simple things work.
I agree. So just to add on that, this is actually pretty funny. So when I started weightlifting 20 years ago, and it sounds like forever, but like I literally from the first day or month or whatever when I started weightlifting, I actually had my own training books, and I've always been someone who has liked to like do arty things and like make my books like really personal. So I've had like training books that I've written in literally from 20 years ago up until, you can say, I'm still writing in my book. Like my coach used to put my training on Excel spreadsheet and I would write it down in my actual training book and write notes with it and stuff. But I literally have 20 years of weightlifting books that I've written in and done my goals. And I've actually like, they're still back in South Africa, but when I've gone back, I've actually like gone through them and seen like goals that I used to put for myself, like even life goals. And I would be like something I put when I was like 13 years old, like I want to live in America one day. And, and then when I like read it, I was living in America at the time and I was like, what the heck? It's like, you start to read it and like, it was so awesome. I think it's so awesome to have something that you can actually go back to and see, especially for when you've actually stagnated and you feel like nothing is getting better, or you feel like, wow, I've been at this point for so long, and just going and looking back at actually how much you have achieved. Sometimes something like that is also a small little thing that can motivate you to let you know, like, wow, I haven't been stagnated for like forever. I've actually come a really long way, and maybe I just need to like not be so super tough on myself and just like maybe take one step back to take 3 steps forward type thing. So yeah, it's just good to keep it for that kind of record as well.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
So a third question we got is about mental imagery. So it's mental imagery in general population exercise prescription. Focusing on verbal cues like core engagement, etc. Are they as popular as everyone is led to believe? Now, this person is currently doing their master's in applied sports science, and they said they would think the psychology of the movement is probably equal to the physical as far as the outcome. What would you have to say about that?
So the way I interpreted that question was, it's so important to move well for a variety of reasons. Engagement of the right muscles, prevention of injury, enhancing performance. And one of the best ways that, and I'm saying moving well from a weightlifting or CrossFit perspective, but it can go to any sport. There's cues for everything in golf, in swimming, in tennis, and it just helps to simplify all of the complicated movements, and it helps you to focus on one thing at a time. So from like a weightlifting perspective, for instance, it's important to, when you are squatting, to say to yourself, keep the core tight. That's a cue. Because if you don't keep your core tight, you're not engaging the right muscles, you're not, lifting the weight you could lift, and you're putting yourself, in a, potential injury kind of thing. So I would say it is very important, whether you're coaching, athletes who want to compete, or whether you're coaching the general population, because even with the general population, you want them to get better. You want them to reach their full potential and to do things well.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say that mental cues are important for those specific reasons. So for activating the right muscles, and then also for simplifying really complicated movements. Like I'm sure, obviously, with weightlifting, for instance, it's you can't just tell someone snatch because there's so many different things going on. But at the same time, you can't say to someone, chest up, back straight, feet, shoulder width apart, remember to pull, remember to pop your hips, remember to chin up. You can't say that all at once. You need to identify where that person is at their training, what level they're at. And, maybe once a day you focus on a different thing, or once a week. So this week we're going to focus on popping the hips. So that's the cue we're going to give. Even if the other things aren't 100%, that's the cue we're going to give. And then when they fix that, next thing we're going to focus on chin up or something, because it can get quite overloaded with information. So that's the way I interpreted the question. I hope I answered it well. I don't know if you have any points on that.
No, I definitely I totally agree with everything that you said there. I mean, when it comes to sport as well, and even myself coaching athletes, and even with myself as an athlete, a thing like weightlifting, again, it's so technical. The movement can look so simple and so flawless when an athlete does it, but so many times when athletes actually do the Olympic lifting movements, they tend to overthink it so much. So that's why it's so important as a coach, like you said, to not give 10 or even 5 different cues. I mean, 5 different cues can confuse an athlete. And what I've noticed is so when I teach the basics for athletes, I always break the movements down. And when it comes to the snatch, sometimes we'll work from the top down. We'll just do things like press behind neck and things like overhead squats or muscle snatch and the basic movements. And, when they come to the actual technical movement themselves, like the snatch, the full snatch, you'll have 1 or 2 points that you'll focus on. I love saying to athletes, because I always see, they don't push their feet into the ground. So push your feet into the ground and big chest. So those two tend to go hand in hand with athletes, but you also find that sometimes when athletes fix those, there's another thing that comes wrong. Or if you see an athlete that again has 5 or even 10 different mistakes, try and focus as a coach on 1 or 2 things. Because sometimes if you fix one thing, sometimes fixing that one thing could actually end up fixing all the other things that was wrong. And cueing things to athletes that they can then, because what I saw about the imagery side of things, if they go and compete or if they do their training, they can visualize to themselves or hear that one cue in their head. And, instead of trying to go and trying to figure things out for themselves and thinking all these movement cues that they need to do, like saying an essay in their brain, because you can totally mess up the movement if you think too many thoughts at one time. Even when athletes go and they do mental imagery about their movements, they must think of the things that their coaches has instructed them to do, something that maybe they have been focusing on for some time. Focus on that. And even when you do mental imagery, just visualizing the movement without doing it, you'll be surprised at how much your technique will improve. If you can see yourself doing the movement correctly in your mind, there's 100% chance that you're going to do that movement correctly, in person.
Yeah.
Because it's most often that the athlete doesn't understand how to do the movement properly, so they can't see themselves moving properly as well. So that's kind of how I also interpret it. So very similar to you, just if they had to not do the actual movement and just visualize it. But I've always been a strong believer, and I mean, there's science to back it up, mental skills training and sports psychology is super important for athletes. And I mean, I've done tons of research in my life and reading and, just listening to people's testimonials of athletes that's been injured and they couldn't train for months because of maybe a broken leg or broken arm, and they end up going to win Olympic Games, for instance.
Yes.
And for months and months, they were just visualizing And that's all they could do. They could just do visualization training. So I mean, like if you're an athlete and you broke your leg and you're like, yeah, you do hurdles. I'm not quite sure what the girl's name was. I think she was a runner for USA. I might be wrong, but yeah, she broke her leg, and it was before the Olympic trials. And I think like a few weeks before the Olympic trials, she could actually start to run again. And she ended up, I think she ended up breaking the world record. And this is like and she like 100% believed it. And the people who were with her, who supported her, her mental skills coaches, they were all like 100%, it's the visualization that you've been doing, and her using all her senses. And again, it's not something that you can just do once off. For you to be really good at visualization and actually getting it to work and to increase performance, you have to train it over and over again. Just like you would go to the gym every single day and train, you have to train your mental skills every single day.
Well, your brain's a muscle, right? So
exactly.
Use it or lose it kind of thing. But it's interesting that you mentioned that case, because in varsity we studied a similar case where there was a gymnast. She was young. I mean, she must have been about 12. And she also injured herself, and she was out for a couple of months. And every single day she would go to the practices and watch her teammates practice. And she would watch them, and she would do her mental training. And by the time she was recovered and went back to training, it was as if she was never gone. Her muscles remembered everything, her strength was there, everything. And she was doing things that she couldn't do before. She because what else have you got to do? Now you've taken out that physical aspect of training. You are now 100% committed to the mental aspect, and it just shows you how important the mental aspect is.
Yes.
If you can do that. So that's awesome.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like, it actually, when you hear stories like that, it gives a person goosebumps. And, like, I've done things before where I visualized, myself on the podium, or I visualized stuff, and like when it happens, it's so surreal, but you almost have that whole like deja vu feeling where you're like, oh, like almost like I've been here, like
I've done this before.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm a strong believer, so like yeah. I'm all for visualization.
I think it's so awesome because it gives you so much control, because your brain is your brain. Like, that you have control over what you're thinking, not really how you're feeling, but it's there's no external things. It's yours. And it's interesting. I was actually talking to a Red Bull athlete on my podcast about a week or two ago, and he's a BMX rider. And we were chatting about, how does he go about doing tricks, and, how does he feel, how does he prepare for it and everything. And he said exactly that. He said he goes and he visualizes. Now, this is someone who's never studied sports psychology or anything. It's just something he did by habit. Visualizes the trick, practices it like in pieces or whatever. And he said by the time you do the trick, you've done it before in your brain. So you've done it before. You're not doing anything spectacular, so it's amazing how all these different stories kind of meet in the middle and prove the point, really.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question. Mona, in relation to bowling, how much of an influence motivation and mental arousal, how much of an influence is motivation and mental arousal to bowling velocity?
Okay, so it's actually funny, like when I saw this question, I wasn't, because this person didn't specify what type of bowling, and I actually asked James about this, and the first thing I said was, I wonder if it's temper bowling or if it's like lawn bowls, and he was like, maybe it's a cricket bowler, because
I think it's cricket.
Yeah. So you do see people that play competitively lawn bowls. I mean, they go to Olympics, and our lawn ball team is actually one of the best in the world. I mean, I'm not sure. I can't remember if they won gold also at Commonwealth Games, but they were definitely, I think the previous Commonwealth Games, they won gold. I think this time they were top 3. But yeah, I was like, there is so many different kind of sports also on the Science for Sport group. So I was like, it could literally like have been any type of balls. But anyways, like, so we get to cricket as a, as the sports psychology thing behind it.
That's fun.
So when it comes to like arousal and bowling and like, also it's people think, okay, it's just an easy movement. You just go and you run and you bowl. It's also, it's highly skilled, and I've seen this many times before, and I've worked with athletes before also with this kind of problem and spoken to their coaches where the coaches would tell me, my athletes performs so well in training. When it's training time, like they are spot on with their technique, the speed of their throw, the acceleration, everything that, they do behind actually doing that movement is so well executed in training. But as soon as it comes to competition or a tournament, they tend to mess up. And a lot of times, and this comes with sport that is highly skilled, and also team sports where maybe there's a crowd involved. There's things like your big match temperament. So a lot of times, there's a lot of pressure on an athlete. Some athletes, use that as motivation and they perform really, really well. Some people, when it comes to big competitions and stuff, they freeze up, they get tense, anxiety gets the better of them and their movement just goes totally out of the window. And the same thing with like athletes when it comes to competition day, all of a sudden they get like super psyched up. And for training, they are relaxed, they maybe like, they're so confident in their movement, they don't even have to really think about it. But come competition day and all of a sudden they psych themselves up, or it's competition day and they are not psyched up enough. That can definitely have an effect on their arousal levels and definitely have an effect then on how they execute the movement. So that is something that like is, you have to kind of see how you as an athlete perform when it's competition time. You get those athletes, and we've spoken about this in part 1 as well, it's like some athletes are just naturals. Like they'll come into competition time, and even if they don't do their best in training, they come into competition and they pull it out of the bag and they like give this great presentation of their movements or their skill, or like bowling or batting or whatever, and they are just like spot on the day, And then you get like those athletes who actually just like everything just like falls flat on game day. And that is something that like, if you can find out like what is the thing that's causing the problem on competition day, and again, you can bring a mental skills coach in to help you with this, or even a coach that has a really good eye for things, like seeing, okay, my athlete is super nervous, or just like pulling them to the side and being like, what's going on today? Like, how are you feeling? And if the athlete is like, coach, I'm like super nervous today, like I'm shaky, have them do some breathing techniques, the same thing like what we spoke earlier, like visualization. Those are all things that you can do to actually just help get you a bit more relaxed and get your arousal level to the point where you will perform at your optimal. Because all athletes are different. So I cannot say to myself, or say to like athletes out there, there's one way and the only way, to get you to perform at your optimal when it's competition day. It's literally getting to know the athlete, getting to see the athlete, execute their movements in training, in competition, hearing the athlete out also. Because if you as a coach just instruct, and you do not know what's actually going on with the athlete, like maybe you're like, oh, this athlete is not good enough, I'm going to drop them for the team. But it could just be a small thing that you as a coach can fix, or you as the coach and the athlete to talk about, fix it there and then, go on with it, and then have the athlete, perform at their best, whatever that might be. So that's kind of like how I understood the question. I don't know if maybe you have something to add to that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that whole individualized process. Sorry, I just see a comment here that I didn't
I think
add
that you
onto
can't
it.
speak to your coach. Well, I just want to answer that. If you can't speak to your coach, then it's something you and the coach have to address after the competition. It's important for, there to be communication. I mean, I've seen this a lot of times when I've worked with rugby teams, is either halftime or after the competition, we'll have some time to actually chat. And if they have something to discuss with me, or I've seen something, or the coach has seen something, we talk about it so that we can implement the change for the next training session, and then for the training session to lead into the competition
Yeah.
session. Maybe if that
100%.
answers the question.
And I think it's, golf is a great example for that, because it is a sport where you need to be calm, but you need to have the right amount of energy to do well. And I know there's a massive thing in golf. It's called the yips, where you just can't get it. You just can't get it. And I think it's very much what we were talking about the previous week, where the more you think about the negative, the more it's going to come up. So,
Exactly.
there's not really much to add on your point. I think exactly that, like, find what works for you. What works for someone else might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for someone else. So find what works for you. Communicate all the time with your coach, whether it's on the field, off the field, in training, so you guys are on the same page, so that they can help you prepare the best that you can. And, like you said, especially with high skilled sports, you need to find, it's like almost like that bell curve. You need to be, you can't be too high, you can't be too low. You need to be right in that sweet spot, and that's going to be different for everyone. So I think it's just experience and being mindful of that process and that learning and everything, practice, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And also like some athletes might think, why am I not getting it? You have to also look for yourself as an athlete, like you are in it for the long game. If something doesn't work now and you have a bad competition, it's not the end of your career. It's literally like how you bounce back from that. I mean, that's the thing that makes really great athletes. So if you can actually find out what's wrong, pinpoint it from a very young, beginning stage of your like sporting career, I think it will, it can only get better from there.
Mm-hmm. Reflection is very important.
Yeah. Okay, so another question we have, what types of words do you use when talking about pain cycles and helping them understand how to move away from it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, how I interpreted this question, and I think Mona interpreted in a similar way, was the kind of pain you feel while you're competing or while you're training, and then also maybe injury pain. So I'll kind of talk about those two different aspects. I think when it comes to the pain that you feel while training or competing, it's obviously different for every sport, but that's like sport to sport. Your legs are gonna hurt, your arms are gonna hurt, you're gonna be tired, it's gonna hurt. And the most effective thing that I've found is that the more you try and ignore that, or the more you try and push it away and be like, I don't want to experience it, the worse it gets. Again, it's that negative reinforcement. The more you tell yourself, I'm not sore or I'm tired, it's going to keep popping up. So someone once said to me, lean into the pain. And that has been a game changer for me, because the minute I start feeling pain, like in a workout, for instance, the minute I start feeling it, I say to myself, lean into it. Like, you have to almost embrace it. Embrace the suck. I know that's a very cliche, but the more you try and hide away from it, the bigger it gets, because it becomes a bigger problem, and you constantly then, you're on the defensive, you're not on the attack. So the things that really help me when I'm in that pain stage is you need to learn how to positively affirm yourself, and I think again that comes with practice, but you can't be in a game or a workout or a match or whatever and beat yourself up, bash yourself. You need to, if you are busy competing and you saying, I'm sore, this is hard, I can't do this, I suck, or whatever, then you're going to believe it, right? And, it doesn't matter how many other people tell you you can do it. If you don't believe that, and if you don't tell yourself that, it won't make a difference. So you need to learn how to reaffirm yourself. And, when you start hurting, say, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting fitter, or I've got this. And the one thing that I've really found works really well is just finding something small. So like you said, not an essay, just for example, I'm a winner, right? So whenever you are in that pain stage or whatever, you just say to yourself, I'm a winner, I'm a winner, I'm a winner. And you can actually feel your body changes. It has renewed energy. You know, it's amazing what your mindset can do. And that I found has really worked a lot. But again, like we've been saying, it can't be a once-off thing. It needs to be something you practice continuously. And then you'll find that that'll become your default, you know, and the minute you start to feel pain is the minute you start to say to yourself, I'm getting stronger, or I'm a winner, or I'm powerful, I'm strong, you know, whatever. So in terms of pain experiencing in a game or training, that's how I would say is just positive affirmations all the way through. In terms of injury pain, if this is part of what the person was asking, what I have found during my rehab process now is that sometimes pain is a good thing, right? Obviously, depending on what you're recovering from. So I think it's very important to, again, have open communication with your doctor, your physio, your biokineticist, whoever you're working with. But for me, when I started feeling pain in my hip, I started panicking because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm not doing these movements like I've been told. I'm doing my rehab exercises, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, I would stop. I would be like, cool, I'm not going to train today because I'm just going to make it worse. Yeah. Then by the end of that day, it would be worse. And I'd be like, what the heck is going on? Like, I thought I was doing the right thing. And, you know, when I spoke to my physio at the time, you know, he was saying, like, you know, you need to understand that pain is good sometimes because it means that things are getting stronger or things are repairing, you know, and you need to be able to work with that because the minute you retract, the pain is going to get worse because now you're stiffening everything up and you're not lubricating your body. And again, this is obviously different for, you know, the different injuries, but that is the one thing I've learned from pain through rehab is that listen to the pain. Like, you have to learn to notice if it's good pain or if it's bad pain, and then just open lines of communication all the time. Yes. Yeah, that's what I would say. I don't know. What do you think?
That is 100% true. I mean, like, I think also one of the things is like when you get athletes now, again, this is different for all, also the individuals or for different sports. It's also athletes need to realize that, like, especially if you are, say you are a weightlifter and you're doing a strength cycle or a volume cycle, you're definitely not going to feel great. You're going to feel really sore and like really like shitty almost every single day, but in a good way. And that's the thing where like athletes also need to understand like the difference between injury pain and, like you were saying, you know, like pain from just a workout being, you know, making you stiff. And that's one thing that I've always, I mean, asked my athletes when they come in and they're like, just, you know, Mona, I have this pain or this pain, you know, and I'll be like, okay, is it an injury pain or is it a pain because, you know, we did a whole bunch of squats yesterday and, you know, your quads are just like super sore for the day. You know, it's the DOMS kicking in. And they're like, no, you know, it's just, you know, I think it's the DOMS. It's just my quads, you know, and I'll be like, okay, you know, it happens. It's totally normal. It's something that like all athletes have to go through, you know, especially if you want to compete and if especially, you know, obviously as your levels go higher and you become an elite athlete. You know, one thing I can say is like a lot of times, and this is where when you're on an elite level, you are actually a lot of the times unhealthy with that because you are literally in pain every single day. And like I've talked to my fellow weightlifters who competes with me at like international competitions, Commonwealths, Worlds, Olympics. There's very rarely a time where you don't feel a sort of pain. It could be anything. So it's like sometimes it's your wrist with weightlifting, and then it's, you know, it's the knees or whatever. And it doesn't mean that it's like going to be in a position where you are, you know, injured or you have to go for a surgery, but you are going to be in some sort of a pain every single day. And that's obviously when you get to an elite level. And I do not, as a coach, recommend athletes to train to that level. This is just something that comes with, it's basically like an elite athlete has to feel that. Like it happens, you know, because
you get better so you can push your intensity more.
Exactly. And I mean, like if you're working towards like a massive competition, like world championships, Olympic games or whatever, and you say, you know, oh, I'm sore today, I'm not going to train. Tomorrow, I'm still sore, I'm not going to train. The day after, oh, I'm feeling a bit better, I'm going to train. Like, you know, to become a great athlete, like, it unfortunately doesn't work like that. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes you have to train through really bad pains. And, you know, I can like, give my testimonial with that, because like I've actually had my knee surgery and my knee injury that came after Commonwealth Games. And before that, I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And, you know, the good thing that came out of it was, you know, I was on the podium with Commonwealth Games. On competition day, you know, I had a really amazing physio that was working with me up until Commonwealth Games. I said to her, listen, I'm giving my all on competition day. You know, I'm going to, you know, I honestly, and that's kind of the mindset that you have, that you like, you don't care what's going to happen. You will give your best on that competition field. It's like you're in battle mode, you know, you're like game ready. So, you know, Tarina, she strapped up my knees. She worked with me like super well. She was actually the physio for the Commonwealth Games as well. So it was really nice. She was with me until she came to my competition, helped me and stuff. And, you know, after my competition, you know, like I had so much adrenaline that I didn't even feel the pain. And obviously that was a quad tendon tear that I was training through. So, you know, like, yes, I did so well, but like afterwards I rested my leg for a bit before my next competition, the African Championships. Started to feel a bit better, went and did African Champs, did really well, you know, took the gold medal. That was my goal. And I was like, oh, you know, I'm on a roll. I'm working for World Championships, come World Championships. And my leg just gave in. Literally beforehand, I couldn't, if I went into a squat, I couldn't even stand up. And this is something where, you know, I pushed myself to the limits, and I should have taken better care of my leg after Commonwealth Games. And if I probably did, you know, and I got the surgery and everything, you know, looked at and whatever beforehand, you know, it would have already been a lot better. But you know, that's kind of how you have to live and learn. And, you know, this is something that I went through. And that's why, like, I've now come to realize that, you know, you have to also understand, like, when I must push myself to the limit and push through pain, or am I pushing myself past an injury and doing something stupid? Because I would tell myself mentally, like mind over matter, you know, like, see yourself on that podium, you know, nothing else matters. And, you know, sometimes it's to a detriment. So that's why it's so important to understand, like, you have to learn to understand and trust your body. You need to know, like, when to push my body, you know, to a point where, like, I'm pushing through stiffness and pain, or if I'm actually, like, pushing myself to, you know, possibly end my career.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and like, you can be so mentally strong and mentally push yourself, but if your body sometimes just says like no, then, you know,
It's no.
things like that happen. So that's also a lesson that I learned. And that's why with my athletes and stuff like that, I'm cautious with my athletes. Like, you know, I'll be like, you know, don't do a stupid thing. Like, you know, listen to your body, but also know, is it again stiffness from pain, or is it stiffness from, you know, injury? So yeah, I'd say that is probably my take when it comes to, you know, with pain and injury, that kind of thing.
It's so interesting because I spoke to someone a few years ago who's very into, I don't know what it's called, but it's like body movement things, like, you know, the bear crawls, and he moves insanely well. You know, that's what he does, that's what he coaches, that's, you know, all the yoga and everything. And he's a physio as well. And he told me that sport isn't healthy, right? Because whether you're a tennis player, say, like he used the example of being a tennis player, like say you're a right-handed tennis player, like your right side of the body is going to be way more activated than the left, so you're going to get imbalances there. And, you know, say you're a dancer, for instance, like you're going to have a lot of like joint pains and, you know, ligaments, and that over flexibility can be bad for you. And it's so interesting because I've always remembered that during my training. And I'm reading a book now called The Blue Zone Solution that is basically studying all the countries in the world that have the longest living people, so basically people over 100. And the mode of exercise that they have prescribed that is the healthiest is literally walking. Walking up a gradual incline, like every day, that is the best mode of healthy exercise. And for me, it's so amazing to gather all this different information because you can kind of make your own opinion out of it, and it's good to see so many people's different points of view. But yeah, I think especially if you're going to an elite level in sport, it is important to remember that you are putting your body on the line, like you are pushing, like you said, your physical limits, your mental limits, and it's not technically the healthiest thing for you to do. You will injure yourself. You will, like you said, have DOMs, which is very unpleasant, and it's going to hurt.
I'm going to do that right now.
I had like the worst leg DOMs over the weekend because of my rehab, and it just hasn't recovered. But anyways, so I think once you understand that and say to yourself, do I want this? No, okay, let me just maybe tone down the training and change my goals. Do I want this? Can I handle this? Yes, because these are my goals. Cool. Then I'm gonna understand that. Like you said, I'm gonna be tall. I'm gonna have niggles. That's just how it is. You put your body on the line.
Yes.
So it's interesting. Some food for thought.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, sir. Now, the body is such an interesting thing. I mean, like if you, and it's something that, like we've spoken earlier, like you sometimes live and you learn, and like that's I think the beauty of like when you are a coach, you can actually help athletes help them not make the mistakes that you made. So that's something that I've been trying to do when I coach and stuff. I'd say to myself and to my athletes, from 20 years of sport, it's up and down, like it's trial and error. You go through so many things in your life, like hopefully like everything that I've learned, I can now help you guys get over that and actually help you guys become better athletes.
That's awesome. Okay, last question. I think we might actually make it before Instagram kicks us off. Okay, so Mona, what importance should we give grit, in brackets Duckworth, in youth athletes, and how do you promote it if one doesn't seem to have enough of it or care about it?
Okay, so this is actually a really interesting question, and I actually went to look up that Duckworth, and the lady's actually called Angela Duckworth, and she actually has quite a lot of books out and like TED Talks and videos and stuff, and she actually talks a lot about like grit and like athletes and like how she has gone and measured grit with like her students, and like because at first I was like I haven't heard of her before, but when I actually went to look it up, I mean, she is like actually really amazing with like what she said and the studies that she's done, and she has then gone and did like I think a PhD in sports psychology, and like what she's learned through like teaching in school to actually like taking that and now taking it with to like psychology and sports psychology and that kind of thing. And like when it comes to grit and athletes now, I think I would say, like if I use myself as an example, that I would say I'm an athlete with grit, because I was not an athlete that was born with talent. I was not an athlete that was just born super athletic. I went in and I won 6 world titles in karate. Like so many people say, like, well, like you've got your world titles and your weightlifting things and whatever. And like I actually had a really rough road getting there. And I think, we have like 27 seconds remaining. I see now. And so I'll quickly get through this question. And like what I realized was, with grit and being an athlete, you have to work hard for something. And often it's not something that you are just 100% like a person can't force you. It's something that's a passion and something that's